right, guys, so what you're gonna do, you remember yesterday when we watched that video about how to compare the angles, and we practiced on the edge of the classroom, and we measured using our pencil, holding it up, doing the siding? That's where you're gonna put all of this into play today. It's much easier when you're doing this side by side than it is looking at an actual still life in front of you and then trying to bring all that down. So we're gonna just kind of baby step up to that. And this also works out great because this cube is 2-point perspective, which is what you're going to do for your candy box down the road. So the first thing that we want to do here is break this box, find the halfway point on each side, just kind of eyeball it. Okay, and then I want you to match that over in the open box on the right. All right, anytime you're drawing in perspective, first of all, you want to know what kind of perspective you're drawing in. And the way that we can tell that this one, what do you think? Is this 1 point or 2 point, do you think? 2 point. How do you think you know that? There's a clue. It's tough. Yeah. So, because even in 1 point, you see two sides of the box. So your first inclination is to say 2 point because I see two sides, but that's not the clue. The edge that's closest to us, we call that looking at an object on edge. So if it was like a tissue box, if I hold it, you know, turned flat, you're gonna see mostly a square. If I turn it to where the corner is facing you, we call that looking at it on edge. That's when you know 2-point perspective is happening. Anytime that you are looking at an object on edge, so where it's tipped on its corner, which is what we have here. This is the closest thing to us on edge. So that's where we're gonna start. When I lay my ruler up against there, and I look at this negative space, does that appear to be a straight line? What do you think? Does that look like a 90-degree angle, which means straight up and down? Yes, it is. Where does it fall in relationship to your halfway point? It's to the right. So we're gonna slide to the right of our halfway mark in our open box, kind of just eyeball it, and go ahead and lightly plant a very straight line in there for that. Make sure that your distance away from your halfway is the same as your image that you're looking at. Okay. Next, there we go, that's better. We're gonna work on what's called the, well, before we go there, let's check our height. And it's easy when you're working side by side like this, because you can lay your ruler across here and you can just slide the mark across. But is it going to be that easy in real life? No. So you could practice taking a measurement here. You could put your pencil at the tip, mark the bottom with your finger, and then slide that over and compare and make sure that you've got your height correct. Okay? And then erase the extras. Now we're going to work on what's called the converging lines. So these top and bottom lines, we will learn, go back to what's called a vanishing point when we get a little bit farther along into perspective. Eventually they converge, or they go until they come together and they touch back at a point. The thing I want you to notice about converging lines is if this kept going, okay, where does it touch? Out here on the edge of your square that this composition is contained in. This point right here is important because when I match my angle with my ruler and I carry it over, I want to make sure that I am touching at that point on the outer edge of my border. Okay, and you can even stretch it out and do a quick double check and make sure that you're coming out that far. Now, you've got a couple options here. You can take a measurement out to your edge if you would like to, and you can mark that. You could even do it with your ruler. You could put the edge here and you could mark how far that comes out and transfer it. That's gonna end. Okay. So measure, mark, transfer. The other thing I could do here is I could just pay a lot of attention to my negative space. And this is why we did all those drawings. I want to really look carefully at this space right here. And does mine match? I feel like mine's still out a little far. Okay, so get that as close as you can. And then we're going to do the same thing on the bottom. So match your bottom right converging line. Pretend you're carrying it out a little bit farther. Where does it hit? It's above the middle mark. And then slide it over. That's a really extreme angle. And then the thing you want to double check, because if I just focus on the edge of this box, it almost fools my eye. My lines are probably too light. Can you guys see that? It kind of fools my eye. This line doesn't really look like this line. But if I look at my negative space does look the same. And it's just because this one's not shaded. This is why it's kind of tricking me. Okay, then we're going to do the same thing for the left. So kind of continue it out. Notice where does it meet over here on that left side of the box. Find your angle, bring it over. Same thing on the top. Okay. Zoom out a little bit so you guys can see a little better. Can you see that a little bit better now? It was awfully light. There we go. Okay, now our sides. You would think this would be, if we were drawing what we know, we would just go ahead and plunk 90-degree angles on each one of these sides, right? Because that's how you do a cube, correct? But we're not drawing what we know, we're drawing what we see. That's why we did that upside down drawing. When I lay my ruler on here, is that a 90-degree angle? No, I'm seeing head shake no. Why is it not a 90-degree angle? How do you know that? It's not straight. We have little space up here, more space as we move down towards the bottom of the box. So we need to represent that in our picture because that is what's happening from the perspective that we're looking at. So even though we know that cube has straight edges, that's what we know in our head, and that doesn't count in drawing. We have to draw what's happening right in front of our eyes. So we're gonna match that angle, pick it up, move it over, and really look carefully at your negative space before you make this line. Does your line taper to where it's thinner at the top, bigger at the bottom, and does this space here look identical to the space you have represented in yours? Once you've got a match, plant that line. Okay? And then if you've got some extras hanging over, go ahead and pull them back. And then do the same thing for the other side, because again, you've got that same thing happening. If you line it up, that is not a 90-degree angle. All right, it has some taper to it. So really, this kind of drawing is more like science or math. There's a lot of careful observation happening here. Make sure you've got a match on your negative space and plant your line. And again, it may look a little weird on the right, like it may be fooling you just because it doesn't have shading, that you're off a little bit. But make sure that this space matches what you've got. All right, now here's your biggest clue on this back part, because your first inclination would be to just go ahead and match these ankles and put those back parts of the cube in. Before you do that, I want you to put a little pin dot at where that back corner falls. So right here, put a little dot on your image. And then I want you to transfer that dot over into your open picture. Use that as a guide for where that corner needs to fall. Because the number one thing I saw happen in 5th hour was that everybody made those lines a little big and their box ended up touching the border on their rectangle there. So if we mark that back corner, we should be good. And then go ahead and match your angles and plant them in there. Oops. And it's really important that you have crispy corners. So everything has to just line up. Okay. Last little line, you want to grab your horizon line. So if you lay your ruler on the horizon line in the left, you can just keep it going on the right. And I'm going to have you go ahead now and start finding, before we jump in, let's find the middle of our cube on the front. So right here, see this portion? Find middle and mark that on your picture and the one you're drawing. And then I want you to use your ruler and find the angles of this shadow right here. So this is shadow 1, this is shadow 2, and it's really light, but there's a third shadow right here. Find these 3 shadows and go ahead and plant those in your drawing. And I'm gonna walk around and see how you're doing real fast, okay? That's okay, you can. No, you're good. This one is gonna slide down so that leaves you. Or how you've approached it before. Can you feel how this is way more right side of your brain than left side of your brain? It takes all of the struggle out if you're constantly just comparing it to what's right there in front of you. Okay? All right, let's start shading on this. So, value finder. And you're gonna look at the top. We're gonna focus on this part of the box first, okay? Ignore your shadow for a minute. Treat it as just one big rectangle. Lay your value finder at the top. We wanna know what the color is here and here so we know how to adjust as we move down, because we can tell that's not flat value, right? You can tell it gets lighter as it goes down. So lay your value finder on there. If I started at 3, I'm up here at the top, I'm trying to cover everything else so it's easy for you to see. Can you see how 3 is not a match? Because what I see through the hole is too dark. It should be an exact match to what's around it. So let's go up 1. Squint your eyes. Does 4 look like a match? check on yours because it's hard to see up here on the screen. You look carefully, and if you kind of squint, you can tell the color in the hole is still a little too dark for 4. So let's go to 5. Does 5 look like a match if you squint at it? Check it on yours. Yes? Do we feel like 5 is a good match? Yes. Okay. So we know the top of this is a 5. Now let's do that same thing down for below. Not a 2. 3. It's pretty close. Let's try 4. 4 is really better. Like when you squint and you look at the difference between 3, it still looks a little dark in the hole. 4, it's pretty much an exact match. Okay, so now I know I need to go from, you can't see that, I need to go from a 5 to a 4 as I come down this side. Okay, so now when it comes time to match that over my drawing, I'm going to start with light value and lay it up at the top. I'm going to work in light layers just like you did on the sphere. Kind of just push a little value in and then stop and check. Squint, that's still too light. I have to go darker. So I'm going to push a little bit of a light layer over the top of that. Check it. Still a little too light. Ooh, I went a little too dark. That's a little too much. So that's where your kneadable, it's so hard to pull it back, guys, if you go too dark. So build it in real light layers. But this is where I can come back in with my kneadable eraser and kind of press it in. Pull a little bit of that graphite back off. And I can try it one more time here. And I'll tell you, it is so hard to shade on typing paper. Like you would think it would be easier, but there's no tooth of the paper here. So it tends to just kind of slide around. If you can get really smooth shading on typing paper, you will be a pro on your good paper. So you're just trying to build that's better, so that you get a good even match. When you squint and you look through your viewfinder, do you have a match to your number 5? Once you've got it up top, we're pretty good. Then I'm going to go down to the bottom and I'm going to try building light layers down here and get this to a 4. And then I'll have both sides and then I can just kind of adjust in the middle. Does that make sense? Oh, that's right on the money. Okay, so now I'm going to just bring it down. Papers underneath me here. I like a cushion underneath when I'm working. I just feel like my graphite goes on a little smoother. My table is pretty bumpy up here. And you guys are going to just shade right over the top of those shadows that you put in. Shadows will be one of the last things that you lay on top of your shading. So we're going to do all of our sides first, get everything nice and smooth. Your background, your foreground, then you'll lay those shadows down. can you guys see how each one of these little ones is going to take you one class period now? If you're doing really accurate measurements and you're looking carefully at shadows and all of that, you've got Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday here on your on this worksheet. What's that?
The bottom part is darker.
The bottom part should be a little bit lighter. So if, see how you've got a 5 to a 4? I'm still kind of tweaking mine. I got to bring mine up a little bit more evenly here on this top part. You can see where I was here. That was my match to my value finder. Now I just need to kind of stretch it so that it's, yeah.
My scale is like backwards to me, I think.
Okay, we renumbered them. Did we renumber your guys's? You guys need holes too. I thought I punched everybody's. So I don't know why they did theirs that way. Any value scale I've ever seen, 10 is always your black. So just write your numbers off to the side and adjust. We're gonna just ignore, and I'm gonna come hole punch them. Does anybody have hole punches in theirs? You do? Okay, this will make it so much easier.
And then like, so like 10 is black and then 1 is
White, yes. Just number off to the sides. And ignore the printing.
I was like,
She's going the wrong way. Typically that is how I work, Haley. I'm that person that if you are supposed to turn right at an intersection, my inner compass tells me turn left. So that would not have been a stretch for me. My internal compass is broken. Okay, so we are ready to pick up here on our other side. Hopefully you've gotten your first face of your cube all straightened out here. You've got it from a 5 down to a 4. Nice and smooth. Cross-hatched. All of that good stuff that we've been practicing. Nice graded value all the way down. And you've taken the time to come back and kind of crisp up your edges, make everything look nice and crisp. Okay, now we're ready to start the second face. So once again, we're gonna match our colors and see where we're at. Okay, looks like on this side a little bit lighter. 4 looks to be our perfect match. So we're gonna be a 4. And then down here on this opposite side where it's the very lightest, we look like we are at about a 2. So we want to go from a 4 to a 2 as we move across here. So I'm going to match my 4 up on this edge. It's pretty close. And then as I come down to this side, I want to be at a 2, which means I'm barely even. Oh boy, sorry, you're gonna have to listen to my dogs now. This is what happens when I make videos at home. Pretty good. I'm gonna go just a little bit darker with this one. Just a bit. Okay, so I'm gonna now turn this into a value scale where I go from a 4. As I come down across, I need to get lighter, lighter, lighter into that 2. And keep in mind, we're working in light layers to begin with, and then we can always come back and add adjustments over the top. Now, just like we did in our last project with the, well, that would only apply to foundations. If you're visual arts, this is going to be new. I'm going to leave a little bit of a highlight along this edge because you can kind of see how that edge is illuminated a little bit. Just leave a little bit of that light shining on that edge, a little white. So it separates those faces apart from each other. Okay. Yeah, that looks pretty good. All right. Next, we're going to do our top. Let's match it. And I'm actually seeing 3 all the way across. But we definitely want it to read lighter than this other side. So kind of adjust here because the light is hitting on the top of this cube. So I'm just going to start with a really, really light layer, like a 2. Okay, so I'm working on my ground right now around my box. I figured out it's about a 3 or a 2. I'm working in true cross hatching today, which is, I usually work in tight circles, but I don't know, it's just feeling like cross hatching today. So the key here is going to be that I'm going to have to give it enough coats to just get it smooth so it doesn't become textured. So sorry. Okay, and just shade right over the top of your shadows, pretend they're not there. Now, even though this background is the lightest color from us, it is certainly not white, because if you hold the white paper, nope, not that. So it's actually, in the background, probably about, oh my goodness, sorry my dogs. It's about a 3, and in its lightest place about a 2. So I'm gonna kind of fade it as I move across here. But I do want to put a little bit of coloration back in here. It's not white. There's really nothing in this picture that's white, so none of the paper should stay white. Okay, now I'm going to come back into my shadows and I'm going to match those. They look to be about a 5. So I'm going to do about a layer 5, and it's going to go over the top of what's already there, and it's going to push it a little bit darker, like a transparent layer over the top. It's not going to cover up, just going to lay over the top of. And it too has a little graded value here towards the center. Well, that might look just a little bit covered up right now. I'll bring it back here in just a second. Let me go ahead and push in these other little shadows. That shadow's really light, so it doesn't need much. Okay, now here's where we're really gonna make it pop. We're gonna come in and you've got this little cast shadow underneath this edge. So we're gonna come in here with the tip of our pencil and we're gonna start pulling out that edge. Little shadow there. Okay, and then it continues up this side as well. It's maybe a little bit heavier at the bottom and it gets thinner as it comes up. Okay, and then right back in here behind this, we've got another little shadow that kicks up and overlaps a little bit in through here. And that is what is going to pop that edge off of the paper. There's also a little bit of one right back in here too. Okay, just crisp everything up. And you are finished with this one. All right, now you're gonna keep going on the others. You're gonna work on this one tomorrow. Each one should take one day. And then we've got, sorry, mine are a mess here. You've got this one will be your second day at home, and this one will be your last day at home. And you really need to carefully look for shadows, angles, and all of that good stuff. Match everything just like we did in this one. Okay, that's it.